Today I want to introduce you to different trees that would be really fun in your landscape. Here we have a carob tree, and they're another good Mediterranean climate tree. And this one's a little smaller than you often see them. But what's nice about it is that they have a very wonderful branching structure, so you can prune them to a lower form if you need to. But actually they're much bigger. They'll get much bigger than this. But it has this really kind of tough, vibrant green leaf. And they're good all over the Bay Area, but in San Francisco they won't fruit. It's not hot enough. But this is at Merritt, and so this is the fruit, and when you crack it open and smell it, it smells just like the carob that if you buy carob powder in the store. Cool. So, but you can see one of the nice things is that it's got that really beautiful reddish twig on the new growth. But whereas when the branches get older, they don't hold that red color. But so it's the new growth that has that more red color. They're drought tolerant, so once they're established, and always never confuse a drought tolerant tree with thinking that you don't need to water it when you plant it. You absolutely have to water it for at least the first year, and sometimes even longer. It's until it gets well established. If you don't give it good deep water, it's going to survive. It might survive, but it's not going to have a lot of vitality. Next, I want to introduce you to the African sumac. Its botanical name is Ruslantia, and it has really beautiful fine foliage, almost kind of like a weeping willow. And it's a good substitute for that and doesn't require near as much water. The Ruslantia has a very inconspicuous flower. There's just this little tiny flower, so that this is probably not why you would have this tree. It wouldn't be for the flower. It really is for the graciousness of the foliage. And this form that you see of the branches kind of rolling over, that's very typical. It also, as it gets older, gets a really nice crackly bark. But one thing that you have to be careful of is that in the pruning, if you prune it hard, it'll send out a lot of vertical sprouts. So it is a reactive tree, and so you do need to be careful about how you prune it. I think it's important when we talk about small stature trees for the garden to talk about Acer palmatum. Now the straight species gets very large, so when I say small stature, they'll start out small, but they will get big. But there's a lot of different cultivars. This particular one is the coral bark, and there's not much new growth on it, but what people are drawn to about it is the new growth is very red. Now what they often don't realize is that the older growth, when you start looking at the trunk, you can see how gray it gets, and people go, well, what's wrong with my coral bark? It's got gray instead of red, and I thought that's why I bought it, was for the red bark. Well, that's only on the new growth. If you want your Japanese maple to look really beautiful and you don't know how to prune, you need to hire somebody. Now, if you don't know how to prune, you need to hire someone for all the trees we talked about, because otherwise you're just going to ruin them. Now, you can pick up there's all manner of books out there, but I don't know that a book is going to help you with Acer palmatum. Most people think of Japanese maples as having a very round head, whereas the coral barks are quite upright. They're nice garden trees, but they're not easy to prune. None of the Japanese maples, if you want them to look pretty, they're often considered one of the more difficult trees to prune in order to look really beautiful. One thing that I encourage you to do is to take advantage of the aesthetic pruning classes up at Merritt College. There's a whole series of them, and some of them are geared a little more general, but there's one complete class on how to prune maples. All of the trees that we've looked at will long outlive all of us if you treat them right and you give them good garden conditions and you prune them properly. And that's really what we want, is for the trees to live on for future generations.